Welcome to another edition of the Dakotan's Election Central, where we are continuing our comprehensive coverage of the 2024 North Dakota election cycle. I'm Jonathan Starr. Today, I am joined by a candidate for the role of North Dakota Superintendent of Public Instruction, Jason Heitkamp. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, I appreciate you allowing me to be on. I've watched a lot of your episodes, so I'm pretty interested.
Appreciate it. Thank you for making the drive all the way up here to Minot.
I love Minot.
Absolutely. Me too.
Yeah.
So we're starting out on the right foot.
Yeah, I used to work in an oil field for 3 years, so the goal each week was to get to Minot at least once.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah, so that was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you saw the wayfinding signs that were put up around town on their way in. Yeah. That came with a lot of conversation. But before we jump into what the role is that we're talking about today, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's get to know you a little bit.
Well, I don't want to tell sad stories. And my mom died when I was 2.5, and I was raised by my dad, and so there was no daycares back then. So I spent every day with him, and he farmed a lot, and that's all we did every day was farm. And so I went to bank meetings, business meetings, all kinds of stuff. And so that's where I got my background from, with business, with taxes, with the county, with all of that stuff, is by following him around.
Yeah, and you're pretty much a stranger to politics. You've never got into the political game till this right here.
I can't imagine that I did. I've actually been on 2 different city councils.
Okay.
I've been a county commissioner, and then I served in the Senate for 2 years. And I expected 4, but I guess they only gave me 2.
They only gave you 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So quite the history there, come from a family of politics as well. What made you interested in the role of North Dakota Superintendent of Public Instruction?
Well, I think one of the reasons why I only got 2 years in the Senate is because I introduced a bill to get rid of the mill levy for schools.
Okay.
I guess, I'll just go back to when I was a county commissioner. Yeah. I was the only one that had read the charter for our county.
Yikes.
And so I've actually read the Constitution. I was a Know Your State winner.
Okay.
And so I know a lot about the state.
Yeah.
And I know that it says that the state shall provide K through 12 education, and that it shall provide secondary education, which at our founding would have been like college.
Right.
But now they call it post-secondary education.
Yeah.
And so I know a little bit about that, and the fact that it also says in the Constitution that the state shall not use property taxes to pay their expenses. And so that was one reason why I was interested in putting a bill in to get rid of the mill levy, because I think that the mill levy is being misused.
Right.
I mean, if you want to do a sidewalk project and have the patrons vote on it, maybe a 10-year payback or something like that.
Right.
But this is actually a mill levy that was put into Century Code, and now it's like running all of the schools in the state.
That's incredible.
And it's never ending.
Right.
And then it goes up with the valuations of the houses, or if you raise your mill levy or lower it. And I don't believe that it's constitutional. And so when I couldn't get my bill through in the Senate, and when I don't want to sound negative here, but when I saw the candidates that were going for DPI,
right,
I felt that it was time for me to jump in and do this.
Absolutely. So we jump right into the firestorm of property taxes right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. And it does seem something. So what's your solution to stopping this mill levy increase that's seems like it's consistently going up, or at least the assessments are going up?
Well, and one thing I would like to say first is property taxes, your bill for property taxes between 45 and 55%. Now, I know Dave Ramsey, this financial guru, said that if you don't like property taxes, you should sell your house and rent an apartment. But the unfortunate answer is, when you rent an office or rent an apartment, you're paying property taxes.
Right. Absolutely.
Yep. So out in the eastern part, the property taxes are getting closer to 60% of what your property tax bill is. So my goal is to either take it to the Supreme Court or to get it taken care of to where we cannot use the mill levy for schools anymore.
That'd be incredible. It seems like it's a little bit unfair. I have parents, obviously, and they don't have any kids in the house anymore. And they have a nice home that they're working on doing whatever with. But 20 years from now, say they have it paid off or whatever, they're still going to be paying property taxes on this, and it's going to keep increasing in value and stuff like that. They'll be renting it till the day they die, essentially, is what one train of thought is on that.
If I can interject, it used to be that we worried about people like your parents or even myself, because I'm 58 years old.
Yeah.
But we're getting to the point where the younger couples or the younger people can't afford a house because of the property taxes.
Right.
Because, the weird part is we have these things called escrow accounts, okay?
Yeah. How do they work?
And I used to do financial advising, and the first thing I asked the people I worked with is, you realize your escrow account goes up every year.
Right.
And they're like, they never thought of that before.
Yeah.
Whether it's insurance or property taxes or whatever, if you have an escrow account, it's not going to be the same amount 30 years later that it was when you took out your loan.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong. Which brings us also into the discussion of insurance, which is just going through this roof right now as well. Just a bunch of costs that are skyrocketing. But for you specifically, what do you view the role of DPI being in North Dakota?
Well, first, we have to get back to having kids know what the Constitution is for not only North Dakota, but the United States. And we have to follow it.
Yeah.
And so we already talked about the points that I want to follow in the North Dakota Constitution.
Right.
The next thing is we have to work on transparency. Now, where I come from, a lot of people don't realize what's happening, like in the Williston School District, for example, because we live over there, but you live closer, so you kind of know what's going on.
Yeah.
And when a person stands up and they're using Robert's Rules of Order and, says point of order, they actually have the floor.
Right.
But, it's just like when I was county commissioner, a lot of people, we had the state's attorney there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't read the charter. They didn't care what was in the charter because if they ever had a question, they could always ask. If people do not know how Robert's Rules of Order works, they should probably not be on the board.
Right.
And so at that point, they closed their laptops and walked out and then said that the next meeting was going to be virtually.
Wow.
Now, at that point, they should have resigned.
Mm-hmm.
Because, quite frankly, that person, whether they have kids or they're just a taxpayer, they have rights.
Yes.
And Robert's Rules is something that we need to know. And if you're going to follow it, you have to follow it.
So the transparency is a very interesting topic. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it in different episodes for the Minot area. You're bringing up the Williston area. What can be done to make it more transparent? Our Minot, they go and they hold theirs at 4 p.m., which can be difficult for parents or for concerned citizens to make it at 4 o'clock for a meeting. Is there changes that you are going to be able to make to mandate or whatever from that office to help encourage some of this transparency that is needed throughout the state?
Well, I'll just give you one more example about Williston. From what I understand, the Attorney General couldn't look into what was going on out there because the school board would have to ask him to look into it and investigate it. Also, Josh Gallion, the auditor, said that he couldn't go back more than 2 years on his audit. Now, DPI would have some courses of action that we could use. One might be withholding some money, okay? Mm-hmm. There's always a carrot and the stick deal.
Right.
We know that the school boards set the curriculum, but the legislature can also set curriculum and have DPI enforce it. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we could do, but I just want you to know, I am not going to be a dictator. So, the people have to rise up. When we were going through COVID at the legislature, we had, a couple thousand people come to the Capitol.
They were concerned.
Yeah. And so we need to have that at the local level also.
Right. And also, I think just talking with some candidates, it was one of the reasons why they began to run for an office this year. Because of what happened during COVID and the lack of transparency, and they were going to school board meetings, they were going to meetings like that. At what point do citizens finally have enough? Do parents finally have enough where it becomes something like how much knowledge? What do we have to do to get to that point?
Well, I think we're past that point.
Yeah,
I do.
You think so?
I literally do because, people always knew that there was problems with the proficiency scores and stuff like that.
That's something we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and so a good friend of mine ended up making a Facebook page called Truth in ND Education.
Okay.
And so all 167 school districts are on that page.
Wow.
And so you can see every proficiency rate. You can see what tests they're taking. You can see what the cost per student is. And the cost per student is not 100% of the budget divided by 100% of the students.
Okay.
It's actually defined in Century Code, and it excludes things like buildings,
Gotcha.
bus transportation, activities. I mean, it's very weird because, I guess I always thought it was, it's maybe around $15,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
But we actually have schools that are over $80,000 per student. We have one school that's $100,000 per student plus.
How can we get away with these things?
Well, the way that we get away with things like this is because you can go to Insights and try to find this information, which is the DPI website, and you'll stay there all day and all night and half the next week and not be able to get what we have been showing, because this person knows what to look for and knows where to look for it.
Yeah.
And we've only had one bad editorial in the newspaper, and that was a person, the school had some pretty poor proficiency rates, but they didn't get mad at that. They didn't say that was wrong.
Okay.
They said that they didn't feel that the cost per pupil was made correctly. And so, but the person never called me.
Okay.
I mean, if I was going to put a nasty editorial in the newspaper, I would at least maybe try to call that person or something.
Right.
And so,
another thing that's probably important right now is teacher recruitment and retention, even in rural areas. And this is probably something that is not just isolated to North Dakota. It's a little bit across the nation. What are some strategies that might be able to be brought up to help focus on this as well?
Yep. Like I said, I'm not deflecting any of your questions. I just want to explain something.
Go ahead.
If you look at all these slides from the school districts, you'll see the most is like one teacher per 12 students. Now, Williston has one that was one teacher per 17 students, but that may or may not be accurate. Okay. Yeah. But when when I went to school and I graduated in 1983, we had a class of 36. We had 2 teachers.
Right.
I mean, we didn't have any paras. We didn't have anything like that. So we had one teacher for 18 students. Okay. And that was a normal. WAPN, all that stuff. That was normal.
Right.
And so I know that they're saying that we are short when it comes to teachers and things like that, but the slides don't show that. And so it's hard for me to talk about it because until I get into the position, I won't be able to, see.
Fully see that.
Yep. But the one thing for me, for retention and things like that, I want to look at the teacher's retirement because I don't believe that it's stable. And that's one thing that I've talked about. And I had a teacher actually contact me about that. And I said, okay, so are you under the rule of 85? Okay. And she said, yes. And I said, you know that it's the rule of 90 now. So you're governed in at the rule of 85. Now it's the rule of 90. So that means that it's not stable.
Right.
Because now you have to work longer because they have an equation that adds up to 85 and then you can retire. Okay.
Yep.
Now for the newer ones, it has to add up to 90.
Wow.
So it just shows right there that it's not stable.
Right. Yeah. So definitely need to bring some stability to the retirement and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that was one thing when I became county commissioner, and that was over 12 years ago, that I saw how bad the PERS program was. And I worked up until the last session. In fact, I was there for the vote. I wasn't in the legislature at the time, but I was there for the vote, trying to convince the legislators to vote to change the PERS program. And that's actually the way that I wanted to have the PERS program changed. I'm not going to take credit for it, but I talked to a lot of people about how to change that. Now we're finding that the Highway Patrol retirement is in trouble. And I do believe that the teacher's retirement is in trouble.
Wow.
And so that's my goal also. And that would be a good way to retain teachers.
Right. Do you feel, and obviously maybe it's not a priority based off your original statement, but do you feel revamping the retirement will also get new teachers to come into the field? I mean,
Absolutely.
A 25-year-old, are they going to be as concerned about retirement, do you feel?
Well, I mean, our whole way that we look at things, when I graduated from high school, you were still at one of these mentalities where you're probably going to pick a business and stay there for your whole life.
Right. Yep.
I mean, now if you stay there for 2-3 years,
it's a long time.
That's a long time. And they're actually probably wondering why you haven't gone somewhere else. But I just said, when you're a teacher like that, usually you have some input in the area and you want to stay in the area.
Yeah.
And so, I think that would be a good thing. And being able to have a transfer if they go somewhere else, that's a huge thing too. So, I used to do financial planning. So,
right. So you know about this stuff.
Yeah.
One thing, an interesting note about me, some followers of the podcast might know it because I've mentioned it before, but I was homeschooled for at least my high school years here in North Dakota. Before that, I was in a private school in Oregon. What's your outlook and view on homeschooling? Is that something that should be protected? I know that sometimes there's some adverse opinions to homeschooling that comes from the state. What's your view?
I know a lot of people that do homeschool. I give them a lot of credit for doing it. I think it's a good way to do it. Some people aren't built for that. So then we have the public school system. And that's why I want to make sure the public school system is taken care of. When you look at schools in the state, probably the best school that you can go to for cost-wise and for curriculum is a parochial school. Okay. And so, but homeschooling, I mean, I know a family that has quite a few kids and they homeschool them all. They're really good kids. They're hard workers.
Right.
And that's what we want.
Right.
You know,
it seems like you hear the success stories. You also have the critics that are saying, well, it's interesting when you're at the grocery store at 11 o'clock and you see a kid walking around the school, they're homeschooling, they're doing whatever. Do you feel that there should be lockdown or anything like that on some things where there's a little bit more liberty with those homeschool environments and those homeschool environments?
You know, the only thing that I've ever said, and I got in a lot of trouble for it. Okay.
Well, we're trying to get more trouble right here.
Well, yeah, but I'm not afraid to talk about it. I said, if you guys want to accept money from the state, it's going to come with strings attached.
Right.
But that's not a threat. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to say that you're homeschooling 17 kids or something like that, we have to make sure there's 17 kids there.
Right.
That may be the only string.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. But like I said, I mean, we can't just willy-nilly send people money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And a lot of the homeschool people do not want money. They just want to be left alone. They want to make sure that their kids, some of them want their kids to be able to play athletics. I think that's awesome.
Right.
Trying to socialize a little bit with the kids in school versus the homeschool. I think that's wonderful. So no, I am 100% behind homeschooling.
So something that's coming on the scene as of recent, Minot North High School has integrated a lot in the new building that's going up, and that's just a wide variety of technology, whether that's hands-on things such as training for CDLs in high school and things like that, to actual technology. Obviously, technology changes almost weekly now, right? There's a new form of AI that's coming out every day, it seems like. What strategies do you think need to be implemented at the state level to help make sure that we're staying technologically up to date at even the rural school districts? Yep.
One thing that we need to do, technology is great, but we also have to instill survival skills into our children.
Yeah.
Okay. Now today, I told you that this morning when I got up, the reason I'm not shaved is because I had no power this morning.
Yeah.
Now we've actually had to live out at the farm for up to a week without electricity when it was, at freezing or below freezing. Mm-hmm. And so, when you talk about having CDLs, technology in high school, I was mowing lawn by myself on the farm, putting my own gas in at 5 years old.
Wow.
I was driving my first pickup when I was 8 years old. I stuck a tractor in the field at 10 years old, following my dad around the field because he thought that I wouldn't stick the tractor in the field if I followed him.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of things that I did in my generation that we've kind of taken away from this generation now.
Right.
And we need to get them back to where they can learn how to drive a manual, a stick shift, and things like that. Right. But I said technology is an awesome thing, but it only works when the electricity works or something else. So I said I think that we can learn the best of both worlds, and that's what we need to do.
Right. Yeah. And I noticed that in some of your comments before that you were focused on kind of like those survival skills and things like that, and making sure that kids familiar with that, and to be honest, they are lost. Yeah, you go and you ask a kid how to change a tire, he's got to learn to do that now. Yep. He didn't just learn that growing up on the farm or wherever he grew up at, and so it's definitely a different environment that we're moving to and we can't have that loss. So sometimes on our podcast, what we do is some rapid fire questions.
Oh, I'm ready for it.
Okay.
I'm ready for it.
And every single one of these is a trick question. So
yeah, I think chocolate ice cream would be the first answer. But go ahead. I don't know what the questions are. But just go ahead.
All right, we'll go with sweet or savory.
Sweet or savory?
Yeah.
I got to go sweet, man.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Really? Even on the farm?
Especially
on the farm.
We always had farm dogs. I can't have one now because I'm not around enough.
Yeah.
But I do have a German Shepherd that my daughter has, and it's probably maybe the only grandchild that I get. So I really have to take care of that dog.
Mountains or beach?
I like mountains.
Okay, mountains or lake?
I'd still have to go with mountains. I grew up on a lake, and I'm kind of burned out. Yeah. So now that my daughter lives out in Bozeman, I love the mountains.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
That's a pretty area.
Yep.
Do you prefer to take a plane or a train?
The plane is always fun for the takeoff, but I rode the train a lot when I lived in Botno.
Yeah.
And so I love the train.
Okay.
Also. Yep.
Yeah. That's one of those overlooked things that's kind of losing its place in life.
Yeah. You don't have to go through this big security thing to get on the train. I don't want to give it away, but I mean, they don't check anything. So you just get on the train and go.
Just go.
So.
Very good. Would you prefer a art museum or a history museum?
History.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that your favorite subject in school?
I love history. I used to be the president of the Richland County Historical Society, so I love history.
That's incredible. Do you prefer handwritten notes or typed out notes?
I don't know. I
let's put it this
enjoy
way.
people trying to get a hold of me. Actually, I probably prefer text messages.
Yeah,
overall. Yeah.
Okay, let's turn the script on that one. Do you prefer to make a handwritten note, or do you prefer to make a typed out note?
If I'm going to make a note, it'll be typed out.
It'll be typed out. See, This is something that's lost in the last 20 years of school.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we had to do creative writing, right?
Right.
And I'm sure that's still a subject.
I still do.
Yeah.
I still do.
I have bad penmanship.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did too much school online.
You could have been a doctor.
Could have been, but instead I sit right here. Do you prefer like podcasts or music?
I like podcasts.
That's good.
I listen to podcasts all day.
There was only one right answer to that question.
Yeah.
You kind of already mentioned this one, but text message or phone call?
Phone call. I like phone calls.
Yeah. Good classic move there. This to me should probably be the deciding factor for everyone that votes.
Okay.
I always introduce this question this way: Apple or Android? iPhone or Android?
I've always had an Android. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. And you know why? Because we never had computers in school.
That's fair.
The first computers we got, PCs,
right?
Was when I went to college at NDSU, and I went from 83 to 87, and we got the PCs about 85. But everybody who went to NDSU at that time had to take a course in computer programming 150. Okay. And we used to have to hand in the cards and then go back at 11 o'clock at night, and they give us the wide green striped sheet of paper with the answers.
That's incredible.
Yeah. See, so I said, when you give me a bad time about the Apple, we never had PC.
Yeah. See, and now PC is taking on a life of its own.
Yeah.
Because now we ask people, are you PC? Are you politically correct?
Yeah. Did you know though, like in 85, they only had like 9 printers at NDSU.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
We used to have to go to like Shepherd Arena at midnight to print stuff out if we had to.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Stuff like that's incredible to think. When you look at how integrated technology is into our lifestyle now, it's hard to believe that there was a life without it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's hard to believe that, in 1960 or 1970, people were handwriting their essays.
Yep, and mailing stuff.
Yeah, and mailing stuff. Imagine that. It mailed someone a note. Last question, the rapid fire, and that's, what's the best part of North Dakota?
The best part? Well, okay, I don't know if you want a certain area or whatever, but I'm just going to tell you, my favorite part of North Dakota is driving everywhere in North Dakota, because I love going everywhere.
Yeah.
Even today, I took off from Wyoming. I went to Bismarck, came to Minot. I'll end up in Harvey tonight. I'll go back to Bismarck tomorrow, and then I'll go back to Wyoming. And I just love it.
You love driving.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. If you love driving, North Dakota is a good state for you.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Absolutely. Do you have like a favorite restaurant that you've picked up along the way that you really got to stop at?
People know me along the way.
Okay.
I mean, I drive too much.
So you drive for the people. You'd stop and eat for the person. Food is secondary to you.
Well, you got to stop at Tower City.
Okay.
You got to stop at Tower City.
Okay.
And as I said, there's places.
Yeah. So moving back to maybe some more applicable questions for what we're talking about rather than the rapid fire. Yep. What are your long-term goals for public education in North Dakota?
Well, there's some areas that people don't even think about, okay? Mm-hmm. One is renegotiating interstate education programs. Okay. I mean, a lot of people, they don't even think about that.
No.
But where I came from, you had NDSU, Concordia, and Morehead State. That was the tri-college. Yeah. And so what's happening right now in North Dakota that people may not know is that Minnesota is giving free tuition. Well, NDSU, they have like 50% plus people that come from Minnesota. So they're really worried about that. So they're raising money to pay the tuition of students from Minnesota.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and most people don't know that. And so that's...
But if you're on the North Dakota side, you still have to pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, of course.
Yeah. So I just said there's a lot of weird stuff going on that people don't know about. We have these assessment standards. There's 5 tests right now that they're allowing people to take. Right. One involves seniors only. One involves juniors only. One involves sophomores only. There's 2 others. We need to go back to taking the pre-ACT and the ACT only.
Right. Yeah.
Because when we're doing these screenshots every day, right, and show the proficiencies,
I've seen those.
It's hard to do the statistics when they may not be taking the same test at each school. Right. But they're doing that anyway. Yeah. And so, our superintendent has come on and said that the test scores don't matter. Well, then why are we paying $5 million a year to test these kids when the test scores don't matter?
Do you think they matter?
I think they matter, absolutely, because these kids are graduating. Right.
And you're pushing for basically a standardized test across the state.
Absolutely. There's a civics test that you have to take to graduate, and you just don't sit down in a room and take the 100-question test. They've actually split it up. Okay. And I don't think that's right. Do you think that they split it up for the new Americans that are coming in that want to become a citizen?
Yeah, probably not.
No, absolutely not. And why would you split it up?
Right, yeah, that's kind of the point of a test.
So I'm just saying, I don't want to be hard on people, but if you're going to give a test, give a test.
Right, yeah. So those are some of the big things that you see in the long run is standardized testing, and the colleges and stuff like that, looking at approaching that from a different point of view.
Yep. And healthy lifestyles is something I talk about. Sometimes people get confused with Phi-Ed because people are like, well, they already teach Phi-Ed. Right. But for like me, I had a gallbladder attack last July 4th. And I lost 40 pounds in the process. Wow. But I still have my gallbladder. Wow. And a lot of it had to do with processed foods, learning how to eat properly. It's not one size fits all. Mm-hmm. And this needs to be taught to kids in high school because it's going to affect them the rest of their lives. You can't just eat out all the time or eat a bunch of processed foods because it's not good for you.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that is overlooked for sure, how to just live in life. So you mentioned that in Century Code, going back to the civics test, it says that a student has to pass the civics test by only 60% to graduate. Yep. So, and you mentioned that you felt like that was too low.
To me, it doesn't matter what the score is. I think that if they're going to take the test, they should take it all at one time. Okay. Because to me, if they're splitting it out 10 questions a week, then they're probably teaching the test to the kids also. That's not going to help people.
No. It goes back to the deal, like the citizens or somebody immigrating in has to take that citizens test. And the question that people ask now is, would a person graduating high school actually be able to pass that test? Right. And they should be able to. Yep. So should we incorporate a test like that in order to graduate high school? You have to be able to pass something like that?
Absolutely.
Would you actually push for that?
I would. Yeah. I mean, our graduation rate is 87% on average. Yeah. And so that's pretty low. Right. And I think that the way that we are going to get this thing turned around is to get people motivated to do better.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. That it definitely comes down to the motivation
Yep.
for sure. So obviously, you got a couple big elections coming up. You got primary day, and all that. When somebody's going to that, wherever they go to their precinct, wherever their polling location is at, why should they vote for you?
Well, I think that the biggest reason is the definition of this this role, superintendent of public instruction, is nonpartisan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the only nonpartisan person that's running for this.
Okay.
The other people talk about being Republican. They talk about being part of a party. They've even asked for the endorsement of a party.
Right.
And quite frankly, I think that makes the people in the other party feel like they're not being represented.
Right.
And I want people to know that if they have questions that they can call and they're going to get represented. And I said, nonpartisan is where I've really excelled. Okay. Yeah. I once got asked to be on a city council. Okay.
Wow.
The person, my girlfriend at the time, cause I was living up in Botna, she was upset because she said, why did you get asked to be on the city council? And it's like, well, I've been on city councils before and I do a lot of stuff and people know that. And so I actually had to get off the city council because it caused friction.
Oh, no.
And, but I do still.
You have a way of
help.
doing that.
Huh?
You have a way of doing that.
Well, I don't understand that. I mean, I said, I only do good things.
Yeah.
One thing that I will tell you is I was on the Richland County Job Development Authority one time. And it was pretty funny because we had a lot of money in an account.
Okay.
And every year they took more money. All right. And I said, do we really need to continue to take money from the taxpayers? Because at the time, the bank was giving us like 1% or 0% on the money.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were like, they didn't know. And so I knew before I asked the question. Because we could take up to 4 mills, but we didn't have to take any.
Yeah.
And so I said, I think that we should look at what we're doing for the year.
Right.
And maybe on the 20th anniversary of the Richland County Job Development Authority, maybe we shouldn't take any money at all.
There we go.
And so they wouldn't do it the first year, but I kept hammering on them. And by the second year, we hadn't taken any money for that. But they were under the assumption that if we quit taking money, that we would lose the ability to take money.
Okay.
And the person there that was from Fargo, from the LARC board, the Lake Agassiz Regional Council, she said, no, Jason's absolutely right. You guys have the ability to take 4 mills, but you don't have to take anything if you don't want to.
Right.
And so you have to know the law in order to work the law.
Yeah. And that pulls us back into the property tax or the school property tax that comes from schools discussion, because it seems like sometimes budgets are set up that way where there are excess areas, but there year over year there's no decrease in those areas, and it seems like there's simply that fear that if we decrease one year, then the next year we may not get that funding back.
Correct.
So
I'm not calling for school districts to change their budgets because they set their budgets, okay? But I would want to change our budget, and I would want to cut our budget.
Right.
Because 10%, that shouldn't be a big cut. There's always 10% to cut.
Some people feel like the DPI could just be done away with completely.
I don't think that's possible because just like what I was telling you before with the homeschool, if they say they got 17 kids, you got to go out and check to see if there's 17 kids. You can't send the sheriff.
Yeah.
We're always, in my mind, we're always going to need a Department of Public Instruction. Because we need to answer questions, we need to verify things. We're using federal dollars, which maybe we don't need to use anymore.
Right.
Okay. And so if we're using federal dollars, you always have to have an organization to check on stuff.
Right. Something else, you mentioned you are the only nonpartisan candidate. Now, you did previously serve in the legislature. Do you feel like that plays into that statement at all, where people will feel in the legislature you were a Republican? Do you feel like people will feel that aura around you with it?
Well, I continue to tell people I'm nonpartisan. I haven't paid my dues, to a party for over 2 years.
Right.
Just because I didn't feel I was going to ever deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
But I said, there's this one blogger out there, he used to try to call me a boss yet, although I was never a boss yet. I was never a part of the group. Now he's calling me a MAGA Trumper.
Okay.
And it's just like, yeah, I mean, you saw my car when I come in. There's nothing on it.
Right. Yep.
You know.
Yep.
I'm just a citizen,
right.
and I'm just trying to fill a gap because I think there is a gap. I really like the nonpartisan position because, like I told you before, people will feel more comfortable if they know that you will help them, and that's why they call you.
Right. And that's the reason why you're there.
Yep.
So very good. Well, if someone wants to support you, what would be the best way to go about that?
Well, I'll give my phone number out, 701-640-4643, or I do have a website, Jason Heitkamp, the letter 4, nd.com. So it's Jason Heitkamp 4nd.com.
Very good. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you joining us today.
Yeah. And, I just said, if you ever have any questions, give me a call.
All right. Sounds good. We'll have your phone number somewhere available. Thank you for watching this episode of the Dakotans Election Central, where we are continuing our comprehensive coverage of the 2024 North Dakota election cycle. I'm Jonathan Starr. Be sure to go to mydakotan.com, click Election Central, where you'll be able to watch other interviews just like the one you just watched. Follow us on Facebook, like and subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to grow that YouTube channel. It sounds crazy, but that's what we're doing. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great day.